Morning, everyone. Today we're going to do something a little different on Three Amigos. You know, all of us, between the three of us, we probably have 120 years of experience. And, you know, while we're a little bit long in the tooth, we're also well versed on a lot of things that are going on. So we're going to talk about our experience with experience and how you can use it to improve your business in the hiring process or even the people that you have. So having kind of kicked that off, Ed, why don't you talk about, you know, your 5 different positions as CFO and what you learned about experience through that?
Well, I've learned, and this is my perspective, and you guys might not totally agree with it, but based upon working at 5 different companies, 5 different management teams, I learned that experience really can make a difference. And every place I went, they wanted to hire the cheapest people they could possibly get their hands on. And the results just weren't there.
Sure.
And so I tried some unique hiring strategies, and they really produced some results. And one of them was I went out and got people, and I paid them the going rate, and I got experience and brought them into the operation, and it really made a difference. The other thing I did was I hired some people, some professionals that were in the later part of their career. One gentleman, he was in his early 60s, and I had a controllership position available, and I really wanted to hire him, but you wouldn't believe the hoops I had to go through to hire him because of his age.
Wow.
And they say there's no age discrimination.
But
trust me, there really is. And it took everything in my power to get him hired. And after I hired him, he was one of the most productive, best employees ever. And then he went on to the company and he took on more advanced roles. And it was a real true testament that experience really matters. And it's not only experience, it's also the dedication of wanting to do a good job and working hard for the benefit of the company. And I think sometimes people later in their careers, they're more motivated to do that, and it can produce really significant results. So I guess if you're going to put me on the scale, I'm on way up to the one end. I'm very pro hiring experience.
Yeah, and I was going to say, in my experience, has been, you know, companies typically hire what they can afford, but they never get what they need.
Well, that's well said, Ray. That's very true. And then another thing I want to add to that, they have no realization of what the opportunity that they missed out on.
Yeah, exactly. So Ron, what are your thoughts on this? Because I think, you know, you've seen both sides, and I think one of the things that Ron said, I wanted to just weigh in a little bit. You know, how many times have we found somebody who's got 1 year of experience 20 times?
Right. That's exactly right. And I couldn't remember if you said that or if that was Phil McCreary that said that so many years ago. I've had so many of these recurring years of experience. I can't remember exactly which year it was. And but yeah, I kind of come down in the middle. I think that each kind of job probably will benefit. I mean, obviously, experience I think is important. But I also have been in some industries where experience wasn't all that important because they were new and fresh and different. And I'll kind of outline that just a little bit. The very first job that I had happened to be in fashion, and I was a very young man, 18 years old, had done some factory work and, you know, odd jobs and hoed beats and done a variety of things in high school. But in college, I was looking for some business experience, and I thought the best way to do it was to go to work in a business, and that happened to be a retail store. So, and I was
Not to interrupt you, was that a shoe store? Is that how you got your start in the shoe business?
It was a shoe store.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it was right on the campus of the University of Colorado, a half a block away. And it was completely filled with kids, obviously, who are college students, who, and this was an era, when we were going through the hippie craze, the flower child thing. The interesting thing is that most of the fashion people had no idea how to understand what was going on, but I did. And so here I was, a student with absolutely no idea about what I'm doing. And I began to talk to the owner about, certain styles. It's like, and I'd say, I think that's ugly. I don't think we're not going to sell any of those, and that kind of thing. Now, I think I had a little bit of a natural touch as well, because you can't really teach people to buy. They have to almost feel it. So we ended up doing a whole lot of design work and bringing in unique products that made us incredibly successful and incredibly well known in our area. And that didn't happen because I had experience. That happened because I understood a culture. So we've talked about on our program here so many times, and that is that the whole point of being in business is to get a customer. If you don't understand the customer, you're not going to get any business. But I understood the customer with absolutely no experience at all. Now, that didn't continue on throughout my whole life. I wasn't always in a situation where I was, a customer or intimately aware of the customer. But I had to learn that you have different kinds of customers, and they have different kinds of thought processes, and they have different expectations. And so it was really there that I learned you have to pay attention to the customer. That's the only thing that matters if you're going to be in business. So as I went through my life, I was fortunate to be able to open a store, and then I opened 7 stores overall, and bought out the owner allowed me, and his dad allowed me to get in business with them, and that's how I got started in business. I bought them out after 3 years, and then I continued to open stores. But I also opened another manufacturing operation. By that time, we were into leather goods, and it was still fashion. So we sold all sorts of things: coats, clothing, shearling coats, women's handbags, leather briefcases. So we had expanded way out beyond shoes. We were in boots and bought the very first pair of Nikes that there ever was from Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, who called me on a regular basis to get reorders. So that was building experience up over time. But the leather manufacturing business we had, which was 80% was to build women's purses. It was, again, not because I had a lot of experience, but because I understood the trends. And that was from watching customers and being intuitive. Now, this is really old stuff. But in those days, every young woman between the age of 14 and 22 had what they called a Latigo handbag. And I mean every single one of them. Latigo handbags were invented by leather crafters. The handbag manufacturing people knew nothing about what was going on in that culture. And as a result, leather shops abounded everywhere. There were 2 or 3 in every town. And but what I noticed is that all fashions come to an end. What I noticed is that that the hard Latigo didn't have a whole lot of flexibility in terms of how you could make it. It also had very little decoration other than some hand tooling and so forth. And we began to see soft-sided kinds of things coming in. And so in our manufacturing operation, we began to experiment with other leathers and Latigo. This had nothing to do with experience. This had everything to do with knowing the customer. And we did quite well. We ended up selling Nordstrom's, which was the flagship winner in those days. If you could sell Nordstrom's, you had made it. And so we had made it. Now, I only bring up those, and there are lots of other examples like that, when I was in the retail and of course, in the manufacturing business. I bring that up sort of just as a counter, a balancing argument against experience as being pure, because experience doesn't help you with what's going to happen in the future. It only helps you with what happened in the past. Unless you can use those patterns somehow to begin to forecast a little bit, which I think you can. And as you get a little bit more experience, you can do maybe a better job. So that's kind of my counterpoint to the just a plain experience issue.
I think maybe to play off that, it is dependent upon what kind of job it is. I think that's
exactly
really important.
Yeah.
I just got through a couple years ago with a big 5-year valuation project and a kind of a nasty contentious shareholder agreement. And basically, we ended up solving the matter by going out and hiring the best valuation expert in the country, who was responsible for writing most of the books and developing the techniques for valuation, who was charging $1,000 an hour as a CPA, which is pretty hefty.
It's good if you can get it.
And I'll tell you something, it was worth every penny. Because prior to that, we were getting all these different opinions from all these different other so-called experts that in reality, they paled in comparison to this guy. And he really made a difference. And after that valuation, within a couple of months, we resolved the whole issue, and which was going on for 4 or 5 years. So I really believe you got to hire the right people, and that's why it's so important when you get a trusted CPA or an attorney, that you're really picking the people that have the right skills for what you want to do. And that means as consultants, we have to bring to the table for business owners the people that can do the best good for them and their problem, because the people they have employed now as professionals might not be the right people for the job.
Yeah,
So
I want to push back a little bit on what you said, Ron, because
okay.
clearly, even in this particular instance, which you used, experience was what made the difference. And the experience was a young student coming in and saying, I don't know what you're doing here with this inventory, but it sure doesn't appeal to any of my student friends. So what you brought in is the experience of the customer that the owner didn't really grasp. And with your ability to kind of tap into the marketplace across the street, and I remember that from Michigan State, it also had a street with one side was retail and the other side was a campus.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought that in and transformed the business.
That's a very impressive story, Ron. What you told, that's very impressive what you did at such a young age.
So I'll throw another one out, which is sort of a counter to your expert that you brought up, Ed, and that was that one of those experiences, and Ray's heard this story, that one of those experiences was understanding that there was a trend in footwear from shoes to boots. First, it was Western boots in Colorado. It was a specific marketplace. Oddly enough, it was driven by the Eastern customers, not by Colorado customers, because everybody who came to school to Colorado from the East thought they were cowboys.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody wants to be a cowboy, right?
Yeah, and I hadn't seen or worn a cowboy boots since I was about 3. And so we went through that period, but there was something wrong with the aesthetics, and that was that at the same time bell bottoms were coming in for the very first time, other than sailors, with bell bottoms. Right. So bell bottoms were being applied to jeans, and how did they do that? They invented them themselves by cutting the seam out on the outside. Oh, young girls did this, and then they would put a triangle in there, making them bell bottoms. Why did they do that? They did it because their narrow pants, jeans, Levi's, did not fit over the boots that they wanted to buy. And they literally cut them. So you see, this is the customer making their own product. Well, all you have to do is stand outside and watch customers walk by a few times, and you go, what's going on with this?
Yeah.
So you realize there's something happening. It's not happening in terms of sales. It's happening in terms of very, very subtle changes in this case, fashion, but also in terms of culture. And in those days, we all looked at our parents and said, these guys are all totally stupid. They don't get it. Now that was arrogance and lack of experience. We now know. But as a result of that and a few other things that happened, I had an opportunity to have a conversation with the vice president who ran sales and design for Fry Boot Company, which was at that point it was nothing. It was just a boot company, I suggested that these are plain. They need to be square toes. They need to be round toes. They had brought out the first square toed boot, and it was a huge success. I suggested we needed more to it, something like a stirrup or a chain or something around the boot. We messed around with it a little bit, and they didn't get it. But they said, if you would like to design something that would go on the boot, we'll build those sets for you and we'll sell them to you inexpensively. And you can test them and see if you can. So we had to buy 144 gross of these things. And you only would sell 18, 24, 36 pairs of a particular style. So we bought 144 of them. It was when we reordered them that they realized something was going on. We're on our second gross of that particular thing. Well, guess what? The harness boot was born, and it was put in the line the following year. Now, the harness boot, it's become very famous. It was ridden. It's been worn by Easy Rider. That helped make it famous, although it was already selling very well. But that boot that I designed and I sketched out on a pad, sent them the patterns so that they could make them. That didn't come from experience. That came from creative insight. And that's kind of, in a sense, that's my counter argument here. And that is that creative insight can add something more without experience. And you have to be careful not to allow it. So compare what happened there to the $1,000 an hour. That particular boot sold hundreds of millions of dollars around the world in the next several years, and was put in the classics of all time by Footwear News, along with the most famous shoes ever to be invented, as one of the very top classics of all time. Now, you might say, gee, that's really great. That's brilliant. Sure, it made me famous in the industry, actually, to a very small way and a very small extent. But went on to spend a lot of time as sort of a secret designer along with 3 or 4 other people in the country. And I did make my money back, but it had to do with a credit line that I needed in order to be able to buy the merchandise. That's another story. But my example here is that if you can foresee consumer trends, that's way more valuable than $1,000 an hour. And that comes from something that is not really experience in the classic way we think about it.
Well, let me take Ed. I gotta take a shot at that because it's
Oh, go right ahead.
itself to one of the things that I've always asked Ron. Why didn't if you'd had more experience, you would have licensed that and you would have given it back to them and said, you can make as many as you want. I just want a piece of it. Instead, they sold hundreds of millions of dollars, and what you got is this story at the end.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ray.
Well, I did make a lot of money because I had a monopoly on harness boots for a long time. Okay, so in my geographic area,
right? But you didn't have a patent on it. You didn't have.
But you can't.
You can't have licensing on it.
There is no such thing. You can't patent a design. There's never been one. There never will be one. You see Nike patenting, their stuff. No, they don't. They can't, because all you have to do is change one stitch and it's now a new design, a new style. that was tried by a company by the name of Famolari many years ago. They're not in business anymore. They had the wave shoes. They tried, and they really spent a lot of time, effort, and money trying to patent that because they wanted to protect themselves.
Right.
They sued several times. Ultimately, they were not able to protect it because people came up with, instead of 3 waves, there were 2 waves or 1 wave. Remember the Earth shoe, which had a negative heel. I mean, they couldn't patent or protect that. Birkenstock couldn't patent that.
Wow.
It knocked off over and over and over. So there's only one way to be able to be rewarded, and that was either they pay me, which would have been probably a salary like anybody else, and I really wasn't interested in being a designer, or they could give me an incredible credit limit and give me a year to pay for it.
And that's what they did.
So then that's what they did. And so I used to buy these things literally by the semi-load and had to have a warehouse to store them because I had to buy a year out and a year of stock at a time.
Wow.
So that was a tremendous amount of money in those days, a tremendous amount of money. So I was rewarded. I think
we're all going to Ron's for lunch today, right? Right?
You're welcome. Come on over.
I didn't realize he was so successful.
Everybody wore those boots, back in the day. I mean, you didn't have a pair of those boots, you just weren't a hippie.
That's right. And there were several other styles. I actually never owned a pair of those boots. The classic harness boot. When I was younger, I didn't really like it. You see, it wasn't what you like; it's what sold. It's what the customer liked. Right. So that was interesting. I have 2 pair today. My old partners, when they came back for the second big time, which was about 10 years ago, my partner saw some and bought a couple pairs. And so I have a pair now, but it's sort of a legacy pair. My feet are too old to really like those boots anymore. But he bought a sort of a classic book that had all of the styles that Fry built on its 150th anniversary. So that was all fun, but enough about me. My point is creativity has its value. And different points of views have its value too. And so, and I'll jump in with you, Ray. It has to do with the job you're trying to get done. That's how you determine how much experience is necessary.
Right. I think I was going to suggest this, and then I'll let you go ahead, Ed. But when you look at innovation, and that's what you did. You innovated, and that has little to do with experience. And I think the 3 examples I would go to, technologically speaking, are obviously Bill Gates with the computer, Steve Jobs with the computer, and Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook. None of those had anything to do with experience. They were all teenagers.
That's right. And when you take a look at innovation like that, you typically find that it comes from young people. Right. I was 19 or 20. I continued to do that kind of work until I was about 28 or so, 26, 27. The market completely changed, and I didn't understand it. It went back to classic preppy. We had to go through a whole different look and feel, and we had to learn that. And recently, with our Microgiants group, I have had to back off a little bit and go to, or if we're doing a design project like a logo, I have to go to people who are in that market and ask them. I intuitively understood how to design certain logos or certain kinds of presentations for companies that fit into that area. I understood. I didn't need to ask it. Today, of course, I don't do that kind of project anymore, but today I have to get other people's reference points because I don't have it. I'm not there. I'm not them anymore. I'm not the customer anymore. So it's really important to go to people who kind of live that particular life. If you're looking for things that are in a trend, like computer trends, who do you go to if you want to find out about the latest website stuff or online marketing?
One of these.
Yeah, I mean, nobody calls us to.
Yeah.
I mean, I get questions like that because I've been in a company like that for 20 years, but typically people don't come to us asking about how to run your computer. You see, that's because that's a young person's game. They're into the technology. You might call that experience. And it is a kind of experience, I suppose. But experience doesn't always count. And if you're a CEO, and this is a problem, if you're a CEO of a company that always did it that way, you're going to lose because you're not listening to the young people who are seeing the future.
Well, another example of that, and I'm really happy you brought this up, Ron, is the music industry.
Mm.
And you look at all the bands that were popular when we were young, and the creative energy and new sounds that they came up with, and these beautiful songs, and using different instruments that were used in the past. And they developed this log of songs. And then it seems like once they get to about 30, 32 years old, no new songs come out.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. It just seems like you got to be a certain age and all this creativity. That's when you're really, really powerful in developing new trends or new music or whatever.
Right.
And after you get a certain point in time, you're just playing the old music. You're not developing and creating new stuff.
That's really true. And so it's really, it's incumbent on managers today to try and figure out where you need that kind of creativity in order to be able to get the right people in the right spot.
And I think to Ed's point here is that a good manager understands his marketplace enough to know I need younger people in here in order to penetrate a market that I don't understand. And you even said that, Ron. It's like,
oh yeah,
you've gotten to the point here where you need the input of younger people, and so I think what we're all agreeing is that experience in running a business can be extremely important. And I would have to say that the three people I mentioned, Zuckerberg, Gates, and Jobs, all were smart enough to hire experienced people to help them grow their business.
I would agree with that. They were sort of visionary people. Well, I mean, Gates actually did the coding himself. Jobs didn't. Jobs hired experts in each one of these fields because he couldn't do it himself. He knew he couldn't. Zuckerberg, he did the programming himself for a long time. So, but the idea he came up with was pretty unique at the time.
He stole it, and I mean, if you've ever watched Social, whatever it is, he was a pretty shrewd, ruthless guy, and he still is, and that's okay, but it's not necessarily how I would do business. And Ed, from your experience, do you find that has been a positive in your career? People who are ruthless and will do whatever it takes, or have you found that a more collaborative, congenial culture is better?
Well, that's a great question, Ray. I think it comes down to a couple of different things. Number one, you have to have the ability to engage your staff, your team, to move forward and do good work. And if you're totally ruthless and don't care about people, you're not going to have a talented staff. And I think the good leadership model that you profess really makes a difference. But by the same token, I think one of the biggest mistakes that most business owners make is that they don't realize they can't make the tough decisions when they need to make them, because they're so afraid how it's going to impact people. So you have to be somewhere in the middle of this whole thing and be balanced. because you have to make decisions in a timely manner that are going to move your corporation along. But by the same token, you can't have mass mutiny on your hands because you'll have no one to do the work.
Yeah, interesting. It's kind of like, we've all been able to look at the military as the example of the hardest decisions anybody will ever make. That when that general says, okay, this is it, and he now commits 100,000 troops to potentially die on the battlefield. That's and that's part of his role. That's part of his job. So I'm glad we picked this conversation, because it's obviously experience can be extremely helpful, and I think sometimes it can be a hindrance to being able to move ahead. And I think that's what you're saying, Ron.
Well, yeah, and I think that it kind of goes back to some of the discussions we've had about hiring and personality assessment and so forth. And so we've kind of talked about that extensively, and viewers can take a look on the channel if they'd like to go back and see some of those hiring things, because I think it really points to what we're talking about, and that is this creative gene versus the diligence gene. And I'm using the word gene, liberally. We're talking about personality, not genetics at all. But basically, the people who are creative are very open to change, and the people who and they're not necessarily very successful. I just told you a couple of sort of amazing stories. Yet they were very small stories compared to the Zuckerbergs and the millions of other great ideas that made people really rich. I didn't ever do anything like that. I stayed in business, but the creativity doesn't pay off very well. And it takes an incredible talent in music or in art to be able to actually get that to work for you so you can make a living doing that. Success today is really based on the other attribute, which is diligence and attention to detail. And so, that is more in the experience realm. If you have that characteristic and you're experienced, now you've really got what you need to be successful in our economy most of the time. So the question is, if we've got 80% or more of the jobs really require the second, the diligence and the attention to detail, there's not a lot of opportunity for unbridled creativity.
Right.
It's got to be managed, and it has to be focused. And if you can't make money from it, it's just a hobby. So, I could have stood around and done sculptures of the harness boot, and what would that have gotten me? Nothing. But fortunately, it was something that people wanted to buy in leather, and there was a company that was willing to build it. And then eventually, many companies that did and continued to do that. But it's very rare. So from that point on, after the creativity was done, the people who made it work were the ones who were stitching all day long, the ones who were pulling the lasts over the toes and nailing the heels on and doing the accounting work and doing the sales jobs. Those are the people who had the attention to detail to get it done.
Yeah. It's funny, and we've talked about this, and I think this is important. I think as Ed in particular has said over and over again, the most successful companies he's worked with have collaborative teams. And so, in my mind, you take the D's and the I's from our perspective, Ron, they're very creative, but they're not very good at getting things done. They get bored easily. Whereas the S and C's are very methodical, they get it done, but don't try to change it. We don't have time for innovation. Why are we doing this? So it's always fun for me to watch how a good team is able to balance those things and bring it together in such a way that you get, you end up growing a company, because instead of being one or the other, you have a balance between the two. And I think that's what Ed's been saying.
Well, I got another example. If you're hiring a CFO, and I see this all the time, they list all these credentials that they're looking for, and they're listing all this experience in a specialized area that they're looking for to hire a CFO. And a lot of times they don't hire anybody with any creativity or innovation. And I think that is the point they're really missing hiring these positions, because innovation is where you want to go to improve your company. Why hire somebody who's going to dig the ditch the same way over and over and over? Why not hire somebody who's got the ability to find new ways of digging the ditch that are more exciting and more interesting and more valuable to the customer?
Well, I think we've all had this conversation, and we all talk about the graying of America and all these businesses that are available today. But the truth is, and I don't know if you guys can confirm this from your own experience, but I've seen statistics say 80% of these businesses that are now out there are simply going to close their doors. Only 20% of them ever really sell. And that is that a function of experience? Is that a function of bad leadership? What is it that causes that?
Well, I think it's poor leadership, because if you can't move with the customer demands, you're definitely going to eventually be out of business. And
remember, Ed, you mentioned a company a couple of weeks ago that was worth $1 million, and the guy just closed the door. Can you explain that again?
Yeah, well, this happens all the time. It happens more than I realized. I thought everybody tried to sell their businesses, but apparently sometimes people, they just get to the point where they don't want the aggravation. They've made enough money in their lives, and they just end up shutting the business down rather than trying to pass it along to the next generation or somebody else who may be interested. And I really think there's a business model there, although no one's been able to pull it off, and trying to figure out how to transform these businesses to the next generation or the next transition for them, so they don't go out of business.
Yeah.
Because if you're an employee there, guess what? You lost your job.
Yeah, no, that's
and you're a customer. You lost one of the businesses that you relied upon in the future.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real disservice.
Well, and I think it's frankly it's pretty selfish. That's my attitude, is that if there was a chance to be able to help another young person, I think Ron and I've talked about this a lot, and a lot of what I've tried to do, and I think he's trying to do with Micro Giants, is how do we mentor these younger people, and so that they can take over these businesses instead of just letting them shut the door. But once a guy or gal has made a decision, I'm not doing that, there's not much we can do. But it's really hurtful in three ways. One, it certainly hurts the owner, even though he quits. It really hurts the next generation, because it deprives them of an opportunity that's already there, and then it hurts the economy. There are three ways in which that selfish behavior has real profound impacts on all of us.
Absolutely.
I wanted to kind of piggyback a little bit on Ed's comments, and yours as well, Ed. I mean, Ray. It really it's important to try to gauge how much creativity should be in a company, and to try to use innovation in a way that is beneficial. One of the most incredible and powerful ways to do that is to try and make some money. And it's not that we can't be altruistic in terms of things that we give to, participate in, volunteer for, or even to be, say, an artist who's not really doing work for money, but they're just doing it for their own enjoyment. But that's kind of a selfish endeavor. For society to benefit, people have to be able to obtain it, whether it's a service or a product. In order to obtain it, it has to be economical.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of a philosophical way to take a look at this. But if creativity is governed by, is it profitable? Can we break even? Can we actually make some money? You don't have to actually change the world, which is sort of the mantra today. That's how an awful lot of these guys recruit really top talent. You know, do you want to continue being a programmer, or do you want to change
the world?
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, fine, great, change the world. None of these people change the world if they don't eventually become profitable, or if they can't at least sell investors on investing in their company until they finally run out of the cash because they haven't been able to make it. And then you go, well, what good did they achieve if they couldn't stay in business? And, nothing. So I think one of the things that is really of interest to me is, how do we help companies, or how do companies figure out how to do this, to bridle the creativity and the innovation that they do have? How do we guide it? How do we focus it? Where do we point it in order to be able to really make this work? I think attention to detail is part of that process. And so oddly, those folks who may not be very creative might be able to manage it. But that's just an idea I have. What do you guys think about how to manage this process of being creative and diligent and have attention to detail to get the job done?
Well, I tell you what, if you're hiring a CFO, and I use that as an example, but that's my background, and you're looking for someone who can only do a certain thing, and he's got 25 years of experience doing it, but he has no attributes of trying to find different ways and more improved ways of getting things done, I think you're hiring the wrong person personally.
Right.
And I don't know how you measure creativity, but some people have it, some people don't.
Yeah.
And in the interview process, many times the people that are making the decisions don't value the creativity part, the innovation part. Every job I took, I figured out improved ways of getting things done and satisfying the needs of the customer. That's not what a typical old-fashioned CFO, what they would have done. And so when they were hiring for these positions, a lot of times I was left out.
Right. Well, now you've got some attributes on both sides as a musician. You've been creative, and then you've also in the world of work, you've figured out how to make a living in the financial side of things and management. And so you've been able to do a little bit of both. Not everybody is blessed with having an artistic skill, and that's. But there are probably more people out there that have artistic skills than are making a living putting them. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
That people who are really highly creative and maybe very, very good at what they do can't really make a living. Somehow, business people need to try and tap into these creative types and get them to channel somehow through some sort of level of discipline, etc. I have been I've been on the creative side most of my life, but I've also had to channel, and it's very hard to do, to try and I was an art student when I first went to work for this specialty store. Because it was a fashion orientation, I guess I adapted and I learned how to do the business side.
Well, and I think one of the things I've always appreciated about Ed is his desire to take his creative side, which, as a rock band guy, in his youth, and then be able to tailor it this way. And what I'm hearing here is that, effective business leaders are able to your point, I really like the expression used, bridle that creativity in such a way to point it in the right direction to make money. And good leadership is about getting both the creative elements and the people who can get things done working together in kind of a train, if that's an expression. But the idea of a bridle, and I really like what you said, Ron, it's like harnessing that. How do you make that happen in such a way that the experience yields the kind of results that creates what we see in the American economy, as an example? And the question is is it still moving ahead in the United States, or are we starting to get bogged down in the idea that we've gone far enough or that it's not important? I don't know.
Well, I just happened to see Warren Buffett yesterday or the day before, and he was talking about this was within the last year or two. He was talking about the top companies when he started his investment group. So that's been 30, 40, 50 years ago now. And then you take a look at the top companies today. It was interesting that out of the top 20, about 6 or 7 were Japanese companies. Today, there aren't any Japanese companies in the top 20.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
in the U.S. has, the majority of the top 20. Korea has one, that's Samsung. There are a couple of Chinese companies, though, in terms of capitalization that are creeped into that. And his point was, who do you think is going to be in the top 20 in 10 years and in 20 years and in 30 years?
Yeah, nobody knows.
That points that you could say, well, that's technology and things change and people don't keep up with things. That's true. And I think for all the reasons we've talked about, I mean, take a look at General Electric today. I mean, they were the top company for 140 years in terms of electric power and power generation and
innovation. Yeah.
And a lot of things, but they certainly are not there anymore.
Right.
So, how did they fail? They got into the plastics business when it was hot in the 70s, completely blew it out.
Yeah.
They got into the computer business in the 80s, completely blew that out. They couldn't do anything but what they were already doing. So, as storied as the GE executive training has been over the last 20 or 30 years even, it turns out when you really take a good hard look at it after the fact, they didn't really train their managers to be able to change with the times at all.
Yeah, they weren't at all innovative. They were stuck in a rut.
As
And I've always
innovative
said,
as they have been in the past, they haven't been able to make any money at it in the present. And you could argue that about DuPont, as well. They've been living off of Dacron and nylon, since the 50s.
Right.
So it's like, it's still one of the big companies. They're still okay, but it's not the kind of thing, you're going to write home to mom about and say, wow, I bought this great stock and I'm making a lot of money. I mean, that old industrial stuff is just old industrial stuff. I mean, that's the issue here.
Yeah. And just as an example of this innovation and looking at things from both sides, I think about Elon Musk, starting with Tesla, and everybody saying, boy, that's the borderline of stupidity. And right now he controls 60% of the whole marketplace for electric automobiles. Now that's going to change over the next 5 years. I understand that, but he is just so incredibly able to tap into things that people don't see as a potential marketplace.
Right. He has a vision that not very many people, a vision in the way to communicate it to people with money to invest in such a way as to convince people who can do it. And now it looks like he's actually going to pull some of these things off.
Well, he already has. I mean, SpaceX is no slouch. It's just amazing. Tesla is Tesla.
Yeah,
nobody wants to buy a Prius. They, if they're looking for something, they want to buy a Tesla.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That is right.
See, everybody want to see my Prius? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, come on out and look at my Prius. Right.
Well, guys, it's almost 10 o'clock. This has been a very, very good conversation. I think people who are listening will benefit a lot from our combined 150 years of experience and take from it what they can to move their companies forward. So thank you, Ed, for bringing this topic up. And Ron, I always appreciate your stories. I think it gives color and depth to everything that we do here. So it's been a good session. Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Thank you, Ray, for moderating it.
And Ray, you're the host now, so you can stop the recording.
Oh, I'm the host?
Yeah, I switched you when you weren't looking.
Oh, okay. How do I do that?
You have to go to more, I think.
How about, oh, there, more, okay. Stop recording, got it.
Okay.